Good afternoon and welcome back to My Harlem Portraits special edition for TRIBECA Festival 2024. To talk about TRIBECA Festival today, we have a very special host who's gonna tell us about his movie, Rebel Country, which is premiering at TRIBECA Festival in the Spotlight Plus category. He is a director and the producer. Welcome to My Harlem Portrait, Mr. Francis Whately.
Thank you very much for having me, Maria.
Oh, I'm so happy you could make it. I know you're very, very, very busy. You are a very prolific TV, film, and series producer and director, and you started your career at the BBC, where you worked for over 30 years, making films in current affairs, music, and arts. You are widely known for your multi-award-winning David Bowie trilogy and for documentaries about Dolly Parton, Hilary Clinton, and more. And most recently, you did the celebration of Glastonbury at 50 for the BBC and worldwide distribution.
That's right, yep.
And now you are doing Rebel Country that examines the ongoing revolution, as they call it, in the movie, in US country music, which is seen through the lens of race, of gender, of politics, of social standing, and more. When and how did you decide to make this piece, which is really extremely timely right now?
Yes, I think the timing is absolutely perfect. And I think with Beyonce's new album, so recently hitting the shelves and hitting the headlines, actually, for all sorts of reasons, I think it's absolutely perfect timing for us. So we started making it a while ago, actually, and it was made out of a company called Why Now, who just presented me with the idea of making something about rebellion in country music. And I wasn't quite sure what that could mean in today's landscape. So what I did is I thought, what does rebellion mean nowadays? And I think for me, rebellion in country music, as opposed to other genres where it wouldn't be rebellious to be different, in country music, it is still, sadly, somehow an act of rebellion to not be white, to not be a man, to not be perhaps conservative in your thinking, and to play a certain kind of country music.
That's right. And you explain it and develop that very, very clearly in your movie. It is very incredible because in your film, you reclaim the different diverse roots of country music through the contribution of Black and Mexican American musicians. And your film shines a light on the history of segregation and censorship, which has been the norm, really, in Nashville, the so-called Blue Country. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I think that there are three particular roots of country music, and those are the Celtic roots that came from Scotland and Ireland on one side, with those migrants coming over and then being pushed further and further south in America and ending up in the southern Appalachian Mountains. And I suppose Dolly Parton is a good example of that. And then, of course, there's the Mexican influence, which is huge when you think of a lot of the southern states. A state like Texas that was part of Mexico at one time, it's not surprising that, you know, that the Mexican influence would be huge. And then, of course, there's the African American influence, which is also massive through gospel music, but also the instruments they actually bought from Africa.
Yeah.
And so I think there is a wide variety of sources for country music. And I think that that is and should be all reflected in the sort of artists that play that music now, and it shouldn't be therefore seen as one thing. And I think too often country music is seen as one thing, and they forget the diversification of its origins.
Like you say in the movie, country music is white, race music, which is now R&B, is black,
Yeah.
and everything is labeled and categorized.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think even now there's, with Beyonce, although she doesn't call her album a country album, she calls it a Beyonce album. But I think some people are concerned that who is this person who has somehow culturally appropriated, to use an old expression, our music, whereas she hasn't culturally appropriated anything. In many ways, that this music actually came, from a multiple of sources, and no one can culturally appropriate it because it's not even what we would call, it's not authentic American music anyway.
And music doesn't belong to everybody.
And music belongs to everyone anyway.
Exactly. At the same time, as you did that, you highlight the connection that there is between country music and the rebel roots in Nashville, as you were saying in the beginning, because you are featuring a new breed of real stars that talk about authentic stuff, who are rewriting the rules that were written, coming out of LGBTQ plus, coming out as LGBT plus performers. Women artists and artists of color are claiming their place in country music. Can you elaborate on that?
Yeah, I mean, if you look at the statistics, and I think the very great journalist Marcus Dowling in the film says the amount of African-American artists between whatever it is, 1920 and 2020 is about 5.
Yes.
And that is an extraordinary situation. And when you have that kind of discrimination against a large proportion of your population, it seems somehow wrong. And so I don't think country music is doing what it says on the box. It's not country music for the whole country. It's country music for a certain demographic of that country. And I think it's time that country music appealed to all people, and all people felt welcome. So, I spoke to several African-American performers and journalists and critics who all said that they felt quite unwelcome sometimes at country music concerts in the southern states. And that seems to me like a situation that needs to change.
Absolutely. And I think this movie is going to change it completely. First of all, because I learned so much from this. I really love music, but I'm not an expert in country music at all. I'm a fanatic of jazz.
Okay.
So I learned a lot from this film, and I think everybody's gonna go and see your movie is gonna come out with a very different perspective of what country music is supposed to be and who it is supposed to appeal.
I hope you're right, Maria.
I'm sure I'm right. I'm always right. Tell me a little bit about the subjects in your movie, because you start the movie with Jelly Roll, this former incarcerated rapper turned country singer, who is singing in a prison, and he's talking about this and saying that country music saved his life.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Jelly Roll, in some ways, is a rebel of the old sort, isn't he? He's a prison visiting. I think he went to prison. I think he told me 40 times in all. He was in and out throughout his childhood and his early adulthood. And I think he saw in country music a genre, because he had been a rapper, as you say, but I think he saw country music something where he could express himself in a slightly different way. And I think his voice suited that genre. And so I think because of the memories of the Johnny Cash Folsom prison film that was so extraordinary, and obviously Jelly Roll is in some ways in his quest for social justice, quite like Johnny Cash in more ways than just performing in a prison. And I think it was interesting to start with him because he's an artist in some ways of the old school, but he's also an artist who celebrates the diversity in country music now. And he's very, very big on championing those artists who maybe find it harder than he has to find a place within the country music genre and on country music radio.
Well, for him, it's easier because he's white.
I think it definitely is easier for him because he's white. I think that's true to say. And I think being a man is also, it makes it easier.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. We live in a white man's world. Okay. So let's talk about also the Black musicians like Blanco Brown and Breland.
Yes.
Because I discovered Blanco Brown. I knew about Breland, but I didn't know about Blanco Brown. And it's fantastic. You
Yes, isn't he? Yeah.
saw him in his studio, and it's amazing what he's doing. Tell me a little bit about him.
Well, Blanco, yeah, he sort of brings the world alight with his music, and he is that extraordinary thing in a way. Somehow Breland is more urban, but Blanco is a proper countryman. You know, he lives out in the country, and you know, he's as country as anyone else. You know, and I think his approach to country music came from a place where he had been brought up surrounded by country music. So it was in his bones. And I think that comes out very, very clearly. So with a song like The Get Up, you know, it's absolutely a country song. And it's a shame because I think I'm right in saying that he recorded that before Little Nas and before Old Town Road. And in some ways, he was doing what Little Nas was doing, but possibly slightly before Little Nas was doing it. So, you know, I sort of see him as the pioneer here.
Wow, that's very incredible. That's very interesting. There is about Breland. Breland is from New Jersey, right?
Yes.
And he's gonna be at the festival.
Yes, he is.
Very young artist. Tell me a little bit more about Breland.
Well, Breland is going to play on Monday night after the premiere of my films at Spring Studios. So he's going to perform there. And I think he also is a very interesting artist because he knows absolutely the history of country music. And he's also collaborated with artists like Keith Urban, who's been a huge champion of his work, and rightly so. And I think he has a more intellectual approach in some ways than some other artists, because he knows the history. But also I think a song like Don't Touch My Truck is amusing because he's saying very openly, he's sort of mocking the tropes of country music by associating it somehow with tailgates and with trucks and with girls with, you know, cut off jeans and all the rest of it. And he's sort of wryly and amusingly sending country music up while at the same time making a fantastic song, which is very much in the country tradition. And yet his other songs are perfectly country. So I think he has his country music chops, if you'd like to say it like that, as well as being someone who can see through the issues inherent within country music and getting artists, African-American artists, played on country music radio and recognized for being part of the genre.
And I think it's fantastic that you show the video where at the beginning of the video, there is the country music artist, I don't remember his name.
And he pushes the artist out the way, yes. Yes, to say, and I think that's why we put it at the end of the film, because in a way he's saying that was the old order and this is the new order and things have got to change around here. And I think he does it in such an amusing way with such a twinkle in his eye that he gets away with it perfectly.
Yes, it was fantastic. I really enjoyed that. Let's talk about the ladies, because here we have Grammy Award winning Lainey Wilson.
Yes.
Who is amazing. And
who has the most beautiful and wonderful accent I've ever heard on any human being, actually.
Absolutely. A Southern accent that,
Yeah.
If I recognize it, I'm Italian, so I don't particularly recognize accents, but I recognize that.
Yes, but that is quite some accent. And she's just a wonderful woman.
And she's the one who recorded also with Blanco Brown, right?
She recorded with Blanco Brown and with Jelly Roll, yes. So she can see the other artists around who she can recognize the talent. So yes, it was wonderful to see her collaborating with Jelly on the song Save Me in the studio, because she brought somehow something quite different to it. Something, I don't know, she brought another dimension to that song, which made it even more beautiful than it was originally.
And made the connection between the two sexes, which is fantastic.
And made the connection between the two sexes. And yes, seeing Lainey and Jelly together was just a wonderful thing, because they're clearly friends and they clearly get on incredibly well. And they've both done a very long apprenticeship in country music, and they've both worked incredibly hard to get to the place they have got to. And I'm just so delighted that Lainey is a Grammy Award winner. She deserves it every bit of the way.
Yes. Let's go to the Mexican American artist.
Oh yes, Frank Ray.
Frank Ray, who was an ex-policeman.
That's right. That's right.
Amazing story, that one. Tell me about that, because that's pretty interesting.
Yes, I think we have Jelly in the film talking about what surprised him was not the fact that he was a Mexican artist in country music, but that he was a cop.
Yeah.
And the convict and the cop. And I've always suggested that Jelly and Frank Ray should do a song together about, a duet, the convict and the cop. But no, he's another artist who I think was very brave to come out with that song, Another Kind of Country, and to say, we're country too. And I think what's interesting about the Mexican artists is that a lot of their traditional songs are addressing very much the same kind of issues that you hear in traditional country music. And so they're much closer than perhaps people would imagine. And I think Frank saying, when there are political statements about Mexicans that they are X, Y, and Z, or X, Y, and Z, they're not all like that. And that is a sort of stereotype. And he's trying to get beyond that stereotype. And I think for one of his first songs to state that so clearly was an incredibly brave thing to do. And I think it would have helped a lot of other Mexican artists coming up, because he's done a lot of groundwork. And I'm very, very proud of him. And I think he deserves everything.
And he also said in the movie that they warned him about doing that song, but he felt he needed to do it to make a statement of what kind of artist is going to be.
Yeah, I think when we get to a stage in country music that managers and record labels are not telling their artists to beware of saying this or beware of saying that, and the artists can be free, will be a place that I think we will all relish and enjoy.
Yes. During the movie, we see Nixon and we see Bush's son, I think it was, who are trying to appropriate themselves of country music, saying how important it is, country music and so on. And that shows another aspect of how country music has been tried to be appropriated also just for political reasons. So tell me.
It has, but before Nixon, country music was associated with the Democrats.
Yeah.
So it was only after Nixon that it became associated with the Republicans and with a white conservative audience. And I think that's very unfair, because it suggests that everyone who likes country music is, I don't know whether I can say this, but some kind of Southern redneck. And that's just simply untrue. And it's an offensive term, and I use it advisedly. But also it's just simply untrue that the audience for country music is a very broad church. And to suggest that you have to be a Republican in order to like country music is patently absurd.
Exactly. Well, again, appropriation of music which is not supposed to be, because its music is
Music is music. Yeah.
universal. You approach another very important subject, being gay and being gay in the South, particularly. Let's talk about that.
I think, you know, there have been gay musicians and gay artists in country music throughout its history, but they've often been hidden. And I think when you get an artist like Sam Williams, then I think it becomes very difficult, because he has to raise his head above the parapet and say, look at me, this is me, whereas his sexuality shouldn't really be part of the of the discussion. So, and especially as you know, coming from the lineage, from the heritage that Sam Williams does, I think it was very difficult. The same with Brooke Eden. I mean, Brooke Eden is a fabulous artist. And she also was very, very brave to show a video of her and her I think then girlfriend and now wife. But again, saying, I'm proud, this is who I am. I'm a country star. I'm a blonde woman, country star, who looks every bit the country musician of old. I just happen to be also, you know, gay. And I think it was great that she came out in that way. And I think the more artists that do that, the less artists will have to talk about their sexuality. The fact that Cheryl Wright was sort of outed and then sort of asked to leave country music, and her career was sort of ended by the fact that she was gay, seems an extraordinary indictment of those times. And I think and hope that we've moved on from that time, because Shelley really was an extraordinarily brilliant artist. And today she would be thriving. Whereas at that time, you know, it was made impossible for her. And I think that's a shame, because she's a wonderful artist and wonderful woman.
And it really brought her to the brink of suicide.
Exactly. Exactly. And you just can't imagine any of this happening in any other genre, really. You know, you can't imagine in pop music anyone, you know, being criticized for their sexuality. It's just not relevant in this day and age.
Going back just a second to Jelly Roll, because he said something very interesting at a certain point, talking about Johnny Cash, and you mentioned before that he considered a revolving door of the judiciary system.
Yes.
That's what and he said that he was saved by this revolving door of the judiciary system by country music. And
yes, I think he was saved by two things. I think he was saved by the hope of country music. I think he was saved by many reasons, actually. I think Jelly Roll is an extraordinary human being. He was saved by the fact of the announcement of his daughter while he was in prison, and he knew that he had to change his ways. He was saved by the fact that people had told him that he had talent in music. And I think he was saved by the very power of his ability to change himself and to redeem himself and to move on from his past misdemeanors. I mean, he was in and out of prison 40 times, apparently. That's a lot of visits to prison.
yes.
And so, you know, to have moved from that position to then be an outspoken critic of the judicial system and to be an advocate in Congress about the fentanyl problem, I think make him an extraordinary superstar, and a superstar that will and should be celebrated around the world, not just in America. In fact, all these artists should be celebrated around the world.
Yes.
He is an exceptional artist and an exceptional human being. And that's why he's in the film so much, but also why he starts the film.
Yes. And I think it's like the red thread that keeps whole movie together.
Exactly. Yeah.
Last thing, Dixie Chicks.
Yes.
2001, September 11. 2003, the war in Iraq. Dixie Chicks, one of the components, she talks against it, and that's it.
Yeah. So she says on stage at the Shepherd's Bush Empire in London that, you know, she doesn't believe in the war, and that's the end of their career. And it's the end of their career in such a way that they've never completely recovered from that, and they're still regarded by some as some kind of outliers, some kind of people who weren't. They were disloyal to America. They were disloyal to the war. They were disloyal to all those people who were fighting in that war. Whereas, you know, Steve Earle as a man said probably far more contentious things, but because he was a man and he wasn't as popular, just in the same way that Lindsay Ell was daring to say that she'd been sexually abused.
Yeah.
And, you know, for that, life is made difficult. You must fit into the cookie cutter, you know, model, and you must, you know, only cover the subjects that are appropriate for country music.
Right. And she sang then, "You Can't Shut Me Up."
Yes. And people haven't been able to shut her up. And, you know, I think she should be an anthem for a lot of people around the world, whether male or female, you know, and she is, again, a great artist who deserves huge success. And I'm so delighted that she was, you know, like with Breland, that she supported Shania Twain recently. I think that's fantastic, you know, and I'm glad that Shania Twain sees their talent.
Yes. Okay, we are coming to the end of this conversation. One last thing. In your film, you have some amazing archive footage and contribution by musicians, historians, and journalists, and also incredible live performances. How difficult was it to put it all together? Find it and put it all together.
Well, I wish I could say it was all me, but it wasn't. You know, I worked for a production company called Why Now, who were brilliant, and also the people on my team were absolutely brilliant. And I can honestly say that they were the best team I've ever worked with. And so I was very lucky in that way. And we had a fantastic a fixer who lived in Nashville, an American fixer, and he was just amazing. And, you know, going to the South, going to a place like Nashville, it's very easy in a way because people are so open.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever their politics, they are hospitable and friendly and articulate and welcome you into their homes and to their lives in a way that would be completely impossible in England. You know, it just doesn't happen here in that way. So that made the whole experience a very enjoyable one.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so yeah, I look back at it very fondly.
Wonderful. And what are you wishing for from premiering at Tribeca?
I'm hoping that two things. One, that the debate about diversity in country music will be moved on a notch.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it can do much more than that, but I hope the more people that see this film, the more people think about the subject and think that things have got to change. And secondly, that people go out and, you know, listen to those artists on Spotify or go and buy their albums or whatever it is, and that these artists, all of them, get better known.
And
I have no financial stake in this. I'm going to say that.
Just
It
to
makes
make it
not a
clear.
jot of difference to me whether they sell 1 million records or one.
Just to make things clear. And in
Yeah,
fact,
I'm not being paid by anyone.
few of the subject, that few of the artists, they said exactly this: streaming changed the game, because now
Yes,
you can tell the truth. Nobody owns you.
exactly. The old gatekeepers, you know, no longer have the power that they used to, whether that's the record labels or country music radio or the music critics. It's now the people choose, and that's got to be good for country music.
Wonderful. So if I can conclude this conversation with this, my opinion, why doesn't the face of country or country music reflect the diversity of the nation? You have asked this question, and I think you have really answered to this question. What do you think? Are
That's
you
for other
satisfied?
people, Maria, that's for other people to decide.
All right.
I can put it in front of
375.
them, and then I'm delighted if you think it, and I hope other people agree with you. Is all I can say.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for this very, very interesting conversation. Thank you for
Thank you, Maria.
your time. And I
Pleasure
hope
to
to
join
see
you.
you in Tribeca.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye, Maria.
Bye.